Everything okay?
Everything good.
And the video?
Yeah, video call.
You already switched on? Okay, alright. That was good.
I could have shaved and got dressed up for this.
Yeah, definitely. You should have, mate. What happened with the effort?
I thought I had to have my radio face on.
Hello and welcome to an episode of Work in Progress, a podcast that is all about providing value to our audience, be it in the professional sector or personal life. I'm your host Artjom and I'm excited to be here. Today we have the pleasure to welcome my good friend Vijay. We've done some business in the past, and you know, all around an awesome guy. So I'm happy to see you. It's been a while, you know. We don't keep in touch enough. That's unfortunate, but we should definitely change that, eh?
Yeah, definitely.
How are things with you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. You know, getting used to life in the pandemic world, if you like. So adjusting and you know, excited to take on some new projects. Yeah.
Good. All right, perfect. All right, let's dive into it. So let's talk about the previous experience you had with, planning a project and actually carrying it out. So that was a large refurbishment, right?
Yeah, it was, and I guess it all came about when my wife and I got married. We basically bought our first family home. So it was around 2015, I think, what seemed to be kind of the peak of the London housing market. So we really kind of stretched ourselves to be able to get onto the property ladder. But I think having kind of stretched ourselves, we didn't get, we got the property we want in terms of kind of the bones of the house and, you know, the type of house, semi-detached, etc. But the internals were very much dated. You know, ideally we would like to buy a place that was like finished to the standard we want it to be, but, you know, the budget didn't allow. So we knew we had to kind of sit back, kind of save up some more money and then take on a mini project is what I would call this one. Because what we wanted to do was really overhaul the house, kind of make it almost into a new house inside, and keeping, like, you know, the some of the features that the house had when we bought it as well. So I think once we kind of had a look through some you know, magazines and Instagram and that kind of stuff, my wife's very much into that, so I let her take the lead on that and decided what we wanted to do, kind of in terms of the bigger things as well, obviously. So in fact the refurb actually started with us initially just wanting to update our bathroom and remove a couple of chimney breasts, which we thought would be quite easy, and we'll just kind of paint the house and it'll look great. Right. Unfortunately, that wasn't really the case, because when we went to get a bathroom quote, we started getting into details and talking about lighting, and you know, some obvious questions were asked by some of the workmen that were coming to give us quotes, like, you know, what's the status of your electrics in the house? And when we take a deeper look into that, it turns out that we had a very old fuse board. Recommendation was to rewire, so all of a sudden it's a bathroom but also a rewire. With a rewire, you know, comes pretty much plastering as well,
decorating and everything else. It's so just like one thing pulls another, right?
Exactly. So plastering, great, but before we can plaster, we'll have to strip all the wallpaper somewhere, you know, and lots of other things. And then you know, it was obviously going to be damaged when we wanted to do the chimney breast work as well. So all of a sudden we have a new bathroom, electrics, chimney breast, replaster, obviously then painting and decorating following that.
So it sounds like the budget went out the window on day one, pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it did. It really
insane.
did. Yeah, and I think the initial budget we had in mind went out the window, but when we understood kind of the scope of the work, the scale of the work, we kind of had to reassess. We had to kind of delay what we were doing, because we wanted to make sure, obviously, that we don't stretch ourselves and run out of money kind of halfway as well. We want to make sure we complete. So I think we then kind of reset and thought, right, what's the most efficient way of going about this refurb, essentially? So if we're doing, you know, X, Y, and Z, what else should we do at the same time? So we took the opportunity to, for example, move some radiators around the house, as well as, you know, because everything was going to be replastered as well. We thought, you know, so we'll introduce some new skirting, new flooring. Obviously with the rewiring, we thought we'd do the lighting as well, so we went for new downlights.
Where did you get the inspiration for that? Did you like do a lot of research and stuff? Was it your wife?
Mostly my wife, I have to say.
She's resourceful, is she?
She is. She's a hobbyist interior designer, so she kind of follows.
Works well with you then.
Yeah. So she likes to kind of take to Pinterest and Instagram and just see what's going on, and she likes the classic contemporary look. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but That's the kind of look that we go for. So she was kind of driving the overall finishes and design, while I was kind of trying to kind of manage kind of the bigger scale of work, demolishing things.
Yeah.
That kind
Like, who was in charge of dealing with the contractors and like finances and things like that?
So contractors and finances was down to me, mainly to manage.
How
That
did
was.
you find out?
It wasn't. It was tricky, to be honest. We began by trying to obviously identify a contractor to help us do the work. And being new to the area, we didn't know kind of who to go to, no recommendations. So I think we went around just inviting some contractors to quote through Checker Trade.
That's a good option.
So we got about, I think, around 5 quotes at the time, and I think you could tell immediately from the quotation process almost which contractors you were most likely to go with versus the ones you weren't. In terms of some contractors wouldn't turn up to appointments, some would be very late. Then the quotes that would follow wouldn't be particularly detailed, wouldn't be broken down. So I think, and then obviously communication as well. It's obviously very important to be able to kind of communicate throughout the project with whoever's project managing the project, just to talk about a lot of the details. And I think English wasn't a lot of people's first language, and that's obviously the case living in London.
Yep.
But
the
cultural thing, and obviously about being in London. But there were some contracts where it got to a stage where it was very, very difficult to communicate what we wanted, and that was also one of the deciding points as well. Obviously, price comes into it as well, but price wasn't the only thing kind of driving the decision. We wanted to make sure that we could get someone that we could work with who was really clear on when they would do things, how they would do things, etc. So
it'd be like diligence, quality, ability to communicate, and obviously the price always, obviously if someone's completely sky high out of the budget, it's like, there's pretty much no point into even going into a discussion, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, exactly. So that was very easy kind of to negate some contractors based on all those things that we've just discussed.
Okay,
yeah,
that's good. And in terms of finances and how you dealt with it, what was it sort of pre-agreed? Was it like your terms or was it their terms? How did you find dealing with that?
So to be honest, the pricing was agreed in advance. It was obviously with yourself, of course. So it was really clear. I think the way kind of every aspect that I just talked through that we did in terms of chimney breast removal, rewiring, replastering, every part of the job was broken down line by line, had a costing for each room, so it was really kind of transparent, kind of what we were paying for and why we were exactly what we were paying for and the amount we were paying for each bit, and we really liked that because we kind of put it together, kind of a wish list of what we wanted, and because we got that really clear breakdown, we were able to kind of like cross out things that were making us kind of go over budget very easily. And once we kind of agreed the final scope based on the prices we were given, we had to obviously agree kind of a payment structure. And to be honest, you asked me if it was on kind of the terms that I wanted. To be honest, I didn't really know what the terms would be because I've never gone about such a project.
Very confusing, right?
Exactly, but I think what was proposed kind of made logical sense. Staged payments, clear deliverables per stage as well. That was really important. So I think we didn't pay anything on day one at all. We waited obviously for the first stage of work to be done. We could see visibly that something's been done, and then we would make the payments, and that's kind of how we proceeded. And what I really liked was we didn't make the final balance until we were absolutely obviously happy that everything had been done properly. And what I was really impressed with is that the kind of the aftercare service, if you like, about getting all the snags and little things, kind of little kind of bits of flooring maybe filled in and that kind of stuff. We had the opportunity to really go around kind of tooth and nail and work out what's missing, And that was all kind of done for us. And when we were completely happy, under no pressure at all, at that point did we make the final payment. So that's why I think it was a good process. Obviously, once we decided.
Sounds like a good process, yeah.
It does
good.
indeed.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, can't say nothing about the contractor for sure, right? After that experience, did you like research, or maybe like obviously nowadays you're planning a much bigger project and it's more costly and everything else. Have you researched like other contracts? Did you consider having a sort of other type of documentation in place this time, or would you be happy, for example, if a contractor sort of done the same kind of stage payment breakdown for you to sort of follow and then sort of get the job done that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the new projects we're going to be taking on are slightly larger. However, based on what we did in the past and how things worked, I was really happy with the way the work was laid out. The payment stages were made up. So I'd be absolutely happy to follow the kind of the same ways of working.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously nowadays you have the more strict, more legal documents like JCT and REBA. They're like standard contracts that people can buy online if they're not happy with the contractor's documents. Because essentially these kind of contracts, they're all for the customer. They're still being reasonably fair to the contractor, but most of the contracts are towards or favoring the customer. So they are good contracts, and you can actually add the stage. I mean, you can add and remove and do whatever you want to do. It's just if you're in doubt and you don't know what you're really getting yourself into, it's probably a good thing, like for maybe a friend of yours or a colleague, when they're gonna approach you and say, Vijay, like how should I do this,
Sure.
So obviously you can do the same way as you've done your first project, or you can always recommend and say, okay, well this is these guys are looking after homeowners, the end user, and these contracts can be definitely considered. So we found them useful. There's all types of contracts. So JCT, they can be minor works, intermediate works with design, and the rest of it, REBA, sort of similar. So the bigger the project, the more clauses, and the bigger and the fatter is the contract, and it could be like 60 pages of just legal jargon.
Right. Okay.
So it's not really for homeowners to administer, so it has to be a quantity surveyor or project manager. So it's probably projects that are like above $500,000 at least.
Right. Okay.
So we're like from past experiences, if a job is substantial, people tend to go for more legal ways of tying everything up.
Sure.
With program of works and everything else, so that if the contractor misses deadlines, then they get sort of punished later.
Okay, right.
So I mean, it's a good way to handle the legality of the project.
Right.
If you're not sure, so it's
to be honest, I've never heard of these contracts before, but I've obviously not been involved in many projects recently. So I'll definitely have to take a look into that. But from I guess a simplicity point of view, I was quite happy with the ways of working previously. I'm a fan of spreadsheets, so it's easy for me to digest that work.
Okay. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is the finances, and how did you sort of find just paying the big amount of money? How, like, was it stressful, just transferring money, or like just dealing with that kind of thing? Because obviously, when you buy a house, that's probably your biggest purchase of your life. Yeah. And then obviously doing construction work to the house is the second biggest expense that you will ever have.
Sure. I think the stress with the finances probably came up front before we even went out to tender for the contractor, because we like to think of us as fairly sensible in that respect. So we did a lot of budgeting in advance, kind of getting into some of the details to really understand what this kind of project would cost, and only when we had the finances in place did we then go out for quotes and then start the work. So there wasn't any stress in terms of the finances and kind of handing over money, because of the way that the payments were staged and we could visibly see that things were getting done. We were confident when we were handing over one stage of payment that we could see what we were paying for. So there wasn't really any stress, and that obviously comes down to the way that we had we had everything written down, so it's just clear. It's everybody is aligned and clear on how we were kind of working and what we were paying for.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you had that kind of experience, because obviously a lot of customers struggle.
Yeah.
And sometimes they struggle because the contractor is not doing what they're supposed to do, or the customers don't know how to act in certain situations. So yeah, I'm definitely glad you didn't have any issues, and that went well. Was there anything that comes to mind, maybe even something small that the contractor could have done better, so that the job would go smoother in any way? Or are you so happy that there's nothing to say?
I think there were a couple of things. We weren't sure about, and to be honest, we didn't even ask the question. But we weren't sure about our lighting and the positioning of our down lighting. And I think we just kind of decided on the day, kind of when the contractor was in, where should we place our lighting, and not having any experience of where lighting goes, we just kind of went with a simple kind of centered to the room kind of lighting structure, like a grid. And then I guess having taken time and lived in the property now, we've kind of seen through research that nowadays people kind of put LED lighting slightly off center and to the edge, to kind of, depending on what they're trying to light up. So maybe a bit more thought behind the lighting. It would have been great, if there was kind of some experience around that from that the contractor obviously could have maybe shared with us from previous projects. This is
general advice,
just
right?
general advice, maybe to guide us in the right direction. And again, going back to lighting, actually, we weren't sure about some small things, which are really personal preference, but we should go for cool lighting, warm lighting. So actually, once we had our lighting put in, we had cool lighting all the way through the house, and then we've actually gone and changed all the bulbs to warm lighting, because we figured that's what we like. But that's personal preference, of course. Things, maybe some questions that the contractor should ask the client. Have you thought this through, or have you thought about what color lighting you like, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is important, and obviously the contractors are supposed to be the specialists, so they should have all the advice, and then they should communicate that to the customer as much as they can. Obviously, some customers won't listen at all, but at least you give them the opportunity to take the advice on board, and then if they decide otherwise, then they can always say, well, we try our best. We've given you the option. You've chosen a different option. It is what it is, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think. That was a minor issue. The biggest issue though that we had was our contractor stole my wife's beloved, lost my wife's beloved coffee teaspoons.
Oh no, that's terrible.
No, I'm only joking. But they were replaced.
Thank God.
But yeah, just watch out for your cutlery drawers.
Cutlery, man. Cool. All right. I was about to ask you another question, but I don't know if it's really relevant. Was there a big failure on your part that you could have sort of, if you had a chance to sort of rewind and do it over again, would you do it somehow differently?
There was one failure actually on our part,
Spoons?
and it wasn't spoons related. It wasn't cutlery related at all. It was actually probably not following our contractor's advice. And you asked me if I could rewind and do it again. I have rewound and done it again. So essentially, there was a wall separating our dining and living room, and at the time, our contractor was saying, "Are you sure you don't want to remove this wall? It'll look a lot better if you have an open plan." That's kind of what people are going for these days. You'll be able to utilize the space a lot better. Both rooms will feel bigger. And I think we were adamant at the time just to keep them separate. I can't remember what the reasons were in our mind. I think, the reason was that we knew in the future that we'll be doing an extension, and we would like to have that separation then. But obviously we had to kind of live in the house for the next kind of 5 or 6 years at least. And very kind of quickly, within kind of 6-7 months, we thought, why didn't we remove the wall? This would have been a lot better. Adam was telling us to remove the wall. We didn't listen. So you'll obviously remember we came back and got that done in the end. So that was kind of round 2 of obviously a bit smaller job, but we had kind of the wall between our dining and living room removed, just to give us that open feel for the house.
Yeah, I guess the main downside is that obviously if you complete the house beforehand and then you decide to do that kind of work, and especially because there's a lot of structural stuff,
Right.
steels and pad foundation and all that stuff. You have to obviously, it's just more expensive than it would have been initially. It'd be probably half the cost, unfortunately.
Exactly, because it involved kind of replastering some pieces, obviously taking up the whole flooring between the two rooms. So there was, like you say, a lot more involved.
Yeah. Then again, I wouldn't say that's a failure. I think it was just a personal preference back then. I mean, I don't think you've made a mistake as such, because I think you just had to try and see what works for you. Yeah. And it was a nice living room as well. Like, you can sit down, watch TV, chill out, and it was completely separate from the dining room.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a good thing. A lot of times people tend to just put like doors, some sort of doors in between, whether they're bifolding doors of some sort or just double French doors. That sort of does it does the job, but you can still see through.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put frosted glazing, but it's not really worth it. Then like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
People are different. Some people love to close those walls, others like to open them. Sometimes they open and close them, or close them and open them, and like, I think it depends on like on your family situation as well, whether you have kids, whether you plan to have kids, whether you're gonna have extra pets or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So
life changes.
Yeah.
So you have to roll with the punches.
That's it.
You can't complain.
We're talking about introducing some doors now to separate that off
Really?
in our new project. Potentially.
You're
So
joking.
we
Can't
are.
be.
Yeah, that is one part of the project we've continuously been confused on, as you can see. So.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the new project then. And I guess the doors into the living room will be part of them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, yeah. Let me talk you through what we're thinking, at least. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be the project, quite a substantial one for us, at least. I guess we when we bought the house, one of the drawbacks of the house was that it had a kind of very small, narrow galley kitchen, and my wife is kind of really into cooking. She loves spending time in the kitchen, and it's like I say, it's small. It's not a particularly sociable space. Kitchen is obviously kind of the heart of the home, and lots of kind of modern homes have open kitchen, living, kind of dining, all that kind of stuff. And so we really want to have that. So we are planning a 4-meter kind of rear extension to our property that will allow us to have that open plan kitchen, kind of with a living room, kind of looking onto a second kind of informal living room, and then we can keep our existing dining and formal living room as it is. So that's kind of the one part of the project. We also in our house don't have a downstairs toilet at all, so we're going to incorporate that as part of the extension. Add on a utility room, and I guess coming back to our initial experiences, we're now trying to see what else we should do whilst we've got the builders in. So we're just we're doing a bit of kind of blue sky thinking at the moment. So at the same time, we're going to extend to the side to allow us to introduce that utility room and downstairs WC, but also convert our garage into a usable room. Our garage is currently it's quite unused, I guess. It's not used for what it was designed for storing cars. It's a old property. The garage is quite small. You can't really fit a modern car in there. So we might as well convert it into a usable space. We don't know what we're going to do with it. It can be a kind of a study, a bedroom, a gym.
It might be an office, since the second lockdown is maybe around the corner.
And that's, you're actually right. That's probably most likely what it's going to be. But I think having a flexible space where we can basically use it for anything would be good. So I think that kind of covers off what we want to do on the ground floor. We also want to, when we do the 4-meter extension, we're going to destroy our garden in the process, I think. So I think we're thinking of obviously landscaping our garden at the same time as well. Because obviously the dream is to have what people have probably seen in magazines when they've been from extensions, is to have like a set of bifold doors going all the way across the property, looking out onto a beautiful garden, which is lit up, nicely at night as well. So that's what we're aiming for. And that, like I say, that probably covers everything we're doing on the ground floor.
And what's the idea with the patio? So obviously there'll be some sort of patio outside. So are you planning to have like one line throughout? Like a lot of people tend to do that. They have for example, if they're tiling internally and then they have some sort of slabs or tiles outside, they try to match them. So when you open the doors, it's just like continuous path.
Yeah,
which looks pretty cool.
That's an idea we recently came across when we were kind of been researching kitchens. One of the kitchen designers kind of was pushing us towards that, to almost have continuous flooring, like you say, from the kitchen / living area out, so it, you know, both areas feel more expansive essentially.
Yeah.
So yes, in short, that is what we're aiming to do. And yeah, we're kind of working on those designs as we speak.
No sort of outhouse of any type at the back of the garden?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. So we'll be losing obviously the storage space we have in the garage once we convert that into a room. So we're going to have to better utilize the existing shed we have in the garden. So there's not going to be a new outhouse. The garden is small as it is, and is going to be decreasing in size obviously with the extension. So we need to kind of make sure that we, I guess, first of all, kind of cut back on the things that we don't need. We're all guilty of kind of hoarding stuff in our garages and
everyone
sheds.
is guilty of that.
So we're going to have a big clean out and see kind of exactly what we need to keep the essentials, like a lawnmower and you know, gardening tools and whatnot, garden furniture.
Raquel was moving recently, and she was complaining that she had so much stuff that she didn't even realize that she had so much.
Yeah.
But I think it's every time you move, it's the same thing. You know, it's
That's
just like,
right.
I didn't buy all this stuff. Like, whose is it? It's like it's the same thing in my house right now. I think I can easily just put loads of stuff together and sell it on eBay for like $5,000, because like literally there's so much, you know, things you accumulate that, you know, at some when you buy it's like, oh yeah, I need it, and then like a year later, well, I don't care. Like a GoPro. Come on, who needs GoPro nowadays? I bought it. I stuck it to my helmet, you know, when skiing. I thought, oh, this is amazing. Never watched the videos, and just put the GoPro for like £400 back into the drawer. Never used it again.
Yeah.
Do you want to buy a GoPro, by the way?
No, thank you. However, I have my own items to sell from my shed, so I like to hoard broken tools.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, so I've got not tools. Maybe I've got a broken pressure washer, which I've always thought, you know, it's broken, but I'm going to fix it one day, so I'm not going to throw it away. So I've got all sorts of old garden strimmers and lawnmowers and things.
I'm like that a little bit, but not to that degree. You have a problem.
Yeah. So those are the things that I'll need to get rid of and be able to better utilize that outdoor space. So I think no specific outbuilding, but just better utilization of the existing one.
Any perks, like any kind of stuff that you like really wanted to sort of incorporate underfloor heating, for example?
Oh, I've got a couple of things like that actually. Underfloor heating is the main one. You know, whilst we have all the floors up in the house, we definitely want to introduce underfloor heating. I think it's a nice luxury to have, and you know, that's probably one of the things that we don't mind paying a premium for. I think overall, my understanding, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think underfloor heating, once it's doing, is it more efficient than?
A lot more efficient.
Yeah. So
because what happens is that it heats up the area equally.
Right.
Whereas if you have a radiator, obviously it just heats up one spot, and it takes a long time for the heat to travel everywhere, because obviously the heat goes up and the cold air goes down, and then, you know, obviously when there's enough hot air, then it just takes up the entire area, so it takes a lot longer. And with underfloor heating, what happens is that when you switch off, and if you have, for example, tiles, they heat up, but they don't lose the heat that quickly. So like for another 2 hours, you'll have a warm floor, even though the underfloor heating is completely switched off.
Right.
So it is much more efficient. It's a lot better. You have a lot more space for furniture, because like if you have like, I don't know, 10 radiators, imagine how much space you're actually losing.
Yeah.
There's you know different types, you know, like electrical or water.
Yeah.
And if you have solar panels, you know, you can connect the electrical underfloor heating to the solar panel, so practically you can get like free energy for the.
Yeah.
Because in our experience, you know, we done that, you know, where the customers say, okay, well, we have like 10 panels, we want to replace them, and then put like the entire house electric, so you know cap off the gas completely, and it makes sense, because like, you know, you can literally use your own energy, and you pay a lot less, and then I don't remember how works exactly. Whether you can use some of it and what you don't use, I think you resell it to the government.
Yeah.
I think that's how it works. In Spain, I think it's the opposite. In Spain, you have to sell it all to the government, and then they resell you at a higher rate.
Right.
Which is ridiculous. Someone told me, I was like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
It's insane, right?
That's crazy.
So you generate something, and then you have to sell it, and then they resell it at a higher price. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
That's Spain for you. What can you do?
But yeah,
okay, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think you're right. The point you mentioned about underfloor heating, it taking up less space. I think that is actually one of the main considerations. Actually, when we were talking about getting it in, our hallway, for example, is very narrow, and with the existing radiator, I think if that's gone, it'll help the space feel bigger, and obviously that will go across. That'll apply throughout the home. But especially some of the smaller areas we have, not having a radiator would be great. But I think with the underfloor heating, we're keeping that to the ground floor. I think to keep down on the costs. Obviously, upstairs is carpeted anyway with radiators. So again, I'm not sure how underfloor heating would work with carpeted areas, and if people tend to go for that upstairs or not. I'm still investing in that myself.
Yeah, so you can still do it with carpets, but the carpet has to be a certain type. So what they call is TOG. So it's the thickness of the carpet and how much air actually lets through. So if you have most likely you have a carpet that's not suitable with underfloor heating, so you'd have to purchase a separate carpet. Yep. You can do it. It's just it's quite expensive simply because when you have a joist floor, so you have to lift everything up completely. You have to insulate it in a special way. You have to introduce special panels to make sure that the floor level doesn't raise, because obviously you want to keep that. Otherwise, you'll have a step up in every bedroom. So that's definitely not what you want.
Yes.
So you can definitely do that, or you could potentially put electrical underfloor heating. That way you don't need to lift all the floors. So you can literally just stick it on the sub base, and then on top of that you can just lay new timber flooring.
Right.
Tiles probably not great for bedrooms, but timber flooring can be still nice, and they're compatible with underfloor heating. So if it's switched on and you wake up in the morning, for example, if you put a programmer to start say 5 o'clock and you wake up 6, or like half an hour later, you'll wake up and the floors are going to be nice and warm, much better than any carpet. So there's definitely ways how to do it. It's I guess the main thing is budget and how bad you want it.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do is like a project where the shell is there, you've done your loft conversion or extension or something else, but inside it's so basic that you don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're like, you feel like you're left out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're thinking. Obviously, we're introducing the whole underfloor heating. And whilst we're on the kind of the topic of heating, we're just moving to cooling now. What I didn't mention was we're also considering doing a loft conversion as well. And my understanding, having kind of been visited at like kind of friends that have loft conversions, is it can get quite hot upstairs. So we would ideally like to introduce, obviously, air conditioning, or put an air conditioning unit in the loft at least. And again, I think doing kind of some research. I think you have to have a unit outside of the house for the air conditioning. Yeah. So if we're introducing an aircon vent in the loft, I think we might consider also having air conditioning maybe in the extended part of the house as well, just to utilise that one is it the condenser that you have outside? Or?
Yes, yeah. So you have a unit outside, and then it's just basically the gas flows between the internal units and the external units. So all the heat is pushed back outside, and all the cold air is pushed inside, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah, so those are kind of the two kind of luxuries, if you like, that we're having in terms of heating and cooling. But for me, kind of my hobbies is kind of like tech, so I really want to try and introduce some kind of smart tech into the house. So whilst we've got kind of everything up, get some Cat 6 wiring put in through the house to kind of future proof it. So being able to stream audio, visual, have all sorts of other bits and pieces like your Amazon Alexa's kind of wired in, your TV's wired in, smart what's it called, thermostats, smoke alarms and that kind of stuff.
Right. So like all connected to one system,
to one hub essentially. Right. So you can control it. It's kind of deciding what your hub is going to be. Is it going to be kind of a Control 4 unit, which is obviously state-of-the-art kind of stuff, or you can do something a bit more DIY, like choose Amazon's Alexa or Google's Assistants and run everything off there. But essentially have everything wired in so we can have good Wi-Fi signal across the house as well, because that's going to be an issue we might have to contend with once we have an extended property, and obviously going up to the loft as well will mean that Wi-Fi is going to drop, and that's obviously something very important these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an easy way how to amplify the signal. So literally, I think there's like even on Amazon you can buy them. I don't remember what's the make, but it's like £150, I believe. You get either it's £150 each or £150 for free. There's essentially just amplifiers, so you can stick them on every floor.
Yes.
And they work perfectly between them. So you will have no issues ever with these kind of amplifiers. The amplifiers that you stick in the socket, they tend to not work really well.
Right.
So there's like they're cheap, like 20-30 quid. So you could, like even BT have them. And they say, this amplifies the signal. From our experience, that doesn't really do much. Yeah. But the one that's hardwired with, Cat 6 cables and everything else, and if they're interlinked and then they have a direct connection to the router, then it works really well.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, you're a tech guy. Why I'm telling you advice? So like you should tell me advice. Huh?
Yeah. I'm still doing my research, but that's kind of my understanding is that if you want to future-proof your house, put Cat 6 wiring in everywhere, and you'll be fine. So that's something I'm going to go for.
And there's barely any difference in cost with the wiring, isn't it? It's like if Cat 5 or 5e, it's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I think that the take-home messages that I've read on numerous blogs and websites is just wire up when you've got the builders in, and you'll be fine moving forward. So that's the intention. And I guess we also, in terms of lighting, we want some smart lighting. So I'm looking at Lutron lighting systems, which allow you to kind of voice control and control your lights from your app. And so looking at that. So these are small luxuries. I'm trying to. I call them small. I haven't investigated the prices on these, but that's this kind of some blue sky thinking, along with in terms of sound, like Sonos sound speakers in the ceilings and the extension, and
it'd be very high techy.
Yeah, and then some of the more kind of domestic of things, like smart thermostats as well, and like I said, Hive and stuff, Google Nest, and smoke alarms, etc. CCTV for security, Ring doorbells, that kind of thing, and basically get it all to talk to each other and communicate and.
Sounds like expensive wiring and electrical works, eh?
Exactly, yeah. So,
I don't think your wife's going to approve. She'll be like, no, we're buying an expensive kitchen instead. Sorry, Vijay.
That is exactly the discussion we're having, Adam.
So, I'm not surprised at all.
And I think the kitchen's going to win, unfortunately.
Yeah, but we always lose.
Yeah,
man, there's nothing we can do, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that, in fact, that's her luxury. So she wants a quality kitchen, so
it just gives you that look, it just gives you if you have a really good kitchen, good like worktop, and just when people walk in, you just feel that.
And I think the things I'm kind of talking about can be added on in the future anyway, so once
as long as you at least have the first fixed wiring, and then you can always add bit by bit.
Yeah, that's what I tell myself when I go to bed at night anyway.
Well, better that than nothing at all, right?
Yep, exactly.
What about are you, apart from that, are you planning to have any kind of like a man cave of some sort, or maybe like a big TV especially for you, watching sports or something? So unfortunately we don't have the space for a dedicated man cave, but I think as part of the extension, so the kind of half of the 4 meter extension will be the kitchen, but the other half will be an informal living space, and that's kind of I'm going to try and make into what we call the man cave, if you like, a big kind of TV on the wall with the Sonos kind of sound bar and speakers in the ceiling and everything that goes with it. So that's kind of what I'm planning there. And that's like for the family, it's not for you only, so your wife can't really object to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say.
Very crafty, well done.
Yeah.
Well done. That's good. All right, and what about the rest of the house? Anything else that you plan to introduce to it? What about the loft conversion you've mentioned? What are you planning to do with that? Is that going to be another bedroom with an ensuite or something different?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So most of the houses on our street have done that already, so we have a fairly good idea of what the space can look like. And you're right, it's going to be kind of most likely going to be kind of the master bedroom with an ensuite. So we do want to. We currently have kind of 3.5 bedrooms only two of the bedrooms are of a decent size where you can comfortably fit in a double bed. So if we do expand as a family, we'll probably want one extra good sized room. And I think as part of the loft conversion, we will also lose one of our rooms for where the stairs will wrap round. We have kind of a box room which will, I think, essentially become an either open study or just an open space essentially where the stairs will go. So we're keen to, when we kind of lose that room, to introduce an alternative much bigger room, of course, up into the loft, to give us that little bit of extra space that we need.
Okay, sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
sounds like a big project.
It's a huge project. Yeah, so
must be exciting and scary at the same time.
It is. Yeah, I think I guess we're keeping on top of it and not getting too overwhelmed, because I mean we started planning this, believe it or not, and we still haven't even started it, but we've been planning it for I think almost 6 to 8 months now, but thinking things through kind of step by step and in detail, so when we actually press go, we don't feel the pressure.
That's, I mean, most people plan even longer than that, so I think you've done well to get to this point where you know exactly what you want, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So you know what you're going to have and where you're going to have it, so I think you have a great idea, and now probably is the best time to budget for everything and just see how far that's going to stretch, whether you can afford all those things, and if you can't afford, you have to obviously prioritize and see what's the best thing that you'll get the most benefit out of now rather than later,
Yeah, or what has to be done now versus what can be done later.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of glazing, obviously we touched on the subject briefly. So is that the idea, just to have large bifolding doors that completely slide to one side so that you can have that open space completely with the kitchen? Is that basically the idea?
That's the idea, and I guess we're just we're in discussions, my wife and I, about whether there should be kind of bifolding doors or sliding doors.
Right.
I guess the consideration is that with the bifolding doors, you can have kind of numerous doors obviously going across, which then kind of divide up the glazing with the borders for each door, whereas with the sliding door you can have kind of one big piece of glass or 2 or 3 big pieces of glass where it's kind of a bit more seamless, if you like, when you're looking out into the garden. So we're just working that out, as well as kind of seeing what the kind of the security features are of each system. So I think bifold doors, from the little bit of research I've done, seem to be a bit more kind of secure in terms of their mechanisms, and because of the way they're designed, they're kind of probably harder to break into. We've had a few burglaries in the area kind of recently, so it's kind of something that's on the top of our minds. So we're just seeing, I think from a visual perspective, we would love to go with sliding doors. It might just be that we go with bifold if they are the secure system, but that's
I mean, nowadays the way they build, and you can get like security, I think it's actually by standard, so it will be security glass, and you can get it laminated, you can get it like so it'll be very secure, so like you can't even break it with a brick, so you'll have to do better than that. The only consideration I would say that you need to sort of think about is sliding doors. They're great, but they may be more expensive than the bifolding doors, simply because of the glass width. And as you said, you want it like seamless. Probably like thin panels, right?
That's right.
Thin profiles.
Yeah.
They look very nice and everything else, but they cost a ton of money. Unfortunately, even if you go out to tender to like 10 companies, there'll be very, very little. Well, maybe not very little difference. Obviously, the price range go up and down. But in general, they're much more expensive. From our experience, like there was I think it was about 20 square meters, and it was like 40,000 for that.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money for a bit of glazing, and that was manual. That wasn't even automatic.
Right. Okay.
Massive panels, like 3x3 or 3. Yeah, I think it was 3x3. So the massive panels, they're quite heavy.
Yes.
And they're not even electric, and they cost 40 grand. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have a massive budget for that kind of thing, right?
That's a good point. I mean, there's lots of decisions like these that we're going to have to make, obviously, when we're doing such a big project. So,
are you planning to do it all at the same time?
That is what we would ideally like, as much as we love having our builders in. We would obviously like to get kind of all the disruption out of the way in one go. I think it's obviously more cost effective and efficient obviously as well. So if we can, we will definitely do that. If we can't, and keep me straight if I'm wrong, but I think what we'll attempt to do is the ground floor extension first, and we can do the loft in the future. And my understanding is with the loft, I think a lot of it can be done from outside the house,
Most of it,
so we won't be kind of disrupted too much when we come to do it in the future.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a loft. So literally, you know, if typically it takes about 10 weeks to build a loft from start to finish, and about 8 weeks of that it's all externally. So they don't go in, you know, unless they just need to run some wires, but it's very little disruption. Obviously, the last 2 weeks, that's when they get in. They need to install the staircase and make good and run everything they need to run. Extend the gas pipes. Probably you don't need to extend the gas pipes into the bedroom anyway. So just literally water, electricity. Obviously, aircon has to be connected. If in your case that would be the case. In terms of aircon, I'm not entirely sure. Is there like a planning permission that you need to do if it's like a semi-detached or a terraced house?
Yeah, it's something I'll need to investigate as well. I'm not sure, because actually, our house, like you say, is semi-detached, but the side of the house that isn't attached, there's very little space between the two houses, so we don't have any space on either side of the house to install the external unit for the air conditioning. So we need to figure out what our options will be for accommodating that unit. We obviously don't want it in the front of the house; it will kind of ruin the curb appeal. So the only real option I can see is on the rear. But we don't know where that could possibly sit.
I'm actually thinking maybe on the dormer, on the loft itself.
Right. Okay.
So obviously, because you want the unit, the internal unit, to be in the loft, and then maybe another one in one of the bedrooms downstairs. Yeah. That would be a perfect position. The only question is whether they're going to allow that, because they allow installing solar panels and things. So I don't see any reason why they would say, okay, well, an aircon, you know, can't be there. Yeah. The main thing is just the noise. So obviously they are noisy, and that's the main concern, and that's why in some boroughs the councils want a planning application to be put through, and then they consider it, and then they allow it or they don't allow it.
Right.
And obviously they look at obviously yours is going to be small because it'll be just servicing 2 rooms, so it's not that, you know, it's and especially if it's on the roof, no one's going to hear it anyway.
Yes, I mean, we live next to an airport, so I'd be surprised if the council have the cheek to complain. Right? Yeah.
Well, they may. They like to poke their nose in other people's business a lot, unfortunately. Okay. Sort of more personal question, I guess. Like, how do you plan to fund the project? Is it easy to sort of just go to the bank nowadays? Did you investigate that kind of option? Yeah,
I mean that's what we've done, and I guess one of the positives, if you like, of COVID-19 is that interest rates have fallen at the bank, and we've been able to to remortgage our house. The work we had done previously meant that the value of our house increased as well. Obviously with time, but obviously when we had the valuation done as part of the remortgage, you know, the assessor could see that, you know, the house is different to what it was when we first bought it, so we were able to get a good loan to value as such and release some equity.
Right. Was that like 70% loan to value, or?
75% loan to
75?
value.
Okay. 75 is better than usual then. I think it's 70 normally.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been able to we'll certainly be able to fund the majority of the works through that. And I think if we want to go ahead with the loft and the luxuries I've talked about, we will need to we've started to save, which to see exactly how much everything's going to cost, and do that in detailed budgeting and work out what we're going to do.
So in terms of finances, would you say that your previous project sort of paid for itself, kind of thing? Like, does it look like that? Over time and with property increase and everything else?
I think the previous project could have paid for itself. I think. I think
if not for the.
It's because of some of the I guess some of the small luxuries that we introduced, the things that weren't necessary. We went for example, quite a high spec bathroom, and you wouldn't obviously get that money back when selling the house. So some small things like that. I think it's certainly. I mean, it almost. Let's put it this way: it's paid for itself. It hasn't added necessarily value to our property because we've done it to our taste and to our kind of standard, which you wouldn't get back if obviously you're trying to sell the home, for example.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, but still, it's good. It's good that the banks are helping now as well. Because it's funny we're going to talk about COVID-19 in a minute, but it's funny how they give you a holiday pay for a mortgage. I mean, I know banks are not, they're not supposed to give you, free favors and all that. But it's just funny when they say, and like a lot of people struggle. Obviously, probably 80% of the country struggles with their bills, and they say, okay, well, we're going to give you 3 months holiday pay, from your mortgage. But how's that going to actually help?
It's not. It's just pushing the problem out, isn't it?
What happens in 3 months? And actually, I heard a gentleman from America. He was complaining about that a lot, and he was saying, and he had a great idea, but it's obviously for the bank. The banks are going to kind of lose out a little bit. So what he says is like, okay, we'll take these 3 months, and instead of asking for the same payment in 3 months, put it on the end of the mortgage. So you basically just extend the mortgage period by 3 months.
Okay.
So instead of like 25 years, it'd be 25 years and 3 months.
Right.
So that way the people don't have to pay, and the banks, it's still a business. Banks are businesses, they're not. Even though everyone sort of hates them and like think that everyone's like rich who works in the banking industry, that's not the case. Obviously, it's just the bosses, the CEOs, and everyone else.
Yeah.
But it's still crazy that how things are, and obviously banks dictate to the government what they can and cannot do, and they basically say, well, okay, well, if you don't like, we're gonna move our bank. There was like so many conversations that happened. Like HSBC done that. I think it was the Royal Bank of Scotland maybe done that. I'm not entirely sure. But it's just you can see real help when it comes your way.
Yeah.
Like for example, for businesses, I don't know if, how much you know about that, but it was business interruption scheme, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
So companies that were struggling with the consequence of having to deal with COVID-19, with their business and everything else, where the money stopped coming in, they are unable to continue, the clients are cancelling their contracts and all that kind of stuff. So the government actually came out and they offered real help. They said, listen, we're going to give you the money. You don't have to repay even like in 12 months, so you can have 12 months for free, nothing at all. The interest is reasonable, and you'll have like 6 years to pay off. And now they extended to 10 years because they know people are struggling so bad, and obviously they understand the consequence. So if they're gonna just sit there and do nothing, the businesses are gonna go out of business, right? People are gonna become jobless, unemployed. That's gonna go up and up and up. So by default they're gonna start losing even more. So I'm happy the way they approach the situation. Obviously everyone's always like, oh, Boris Johnson, what does he know, and all that kind of stuff. People always have opinions. Yeah. I think the government's doing what they can. You can't do everything 100%. There's people involved, and that's another thing. I don't think people actually understand how many people involved in decisions. It's not Boris Johnson,
of course.
clicking buttons. There's like armies of advisors. Can you imagine the teams he has? It's experts. It's people who they've been in the field for 20 years or whatever. So they give good advice, and then when Boris Johnson's make the announcement, he's literally just the face.
Exactly. Yeah.
People get upset. It's like, well, okay, so what's the alternative? When you ask someone, like when they complain, and they're like, well, what's the alternative to Boris Johnson's proposal? And they can't really say anything. Well, I don't know, but like this plan sucks.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly, I think.
Yeah. There's always difficult decisions to be made, aren't there? So as long as they're kind of data driven, it's fine. So
but I think the government definitely helps as much as they can. Yeah, of course, they can help more, and they can just hand out more money to everyone, but I don't know if that's actually a long-term solution. And as people are, when they have money that they don't particularly need, they're going to just spend on things they don't need either. Yeah. So it's kind of like, speaking about COVID-19, so how did the pandemic affect your life and overall standard of living?
Yeah, so I guess the pandemic for me and I guess for my wife as well, it hasn't had we've very much been blessed and not been too impacted by the virus itself. I mean, from a health perspective, we've not contracted the virus, and we've not been in touch with anyone that has. So and our families have been okay. But I guess from a lifestyle perspective, we're no longer working from the offices we were based in London. So we're very much kind of utilizing and enjoying our home for a lot more for the first time, especially like our garden. You never knew how precious outdoor space was, for example. So I think it was difficult to begin with. Kind of not being able to see other people and working from the same place you live in and do everything. But I think having kind of adjusted, building a routine, and obviously building, kind of repurposing some of the rooms at our house for working, we've kind of got used to that, and it's kind of helped us think about what we want in the future as well, given the fact that lots of businesses like the ones that we work for are going to be moving to a more home-based approach, and a lot of kind of living and working is going to now be done from home in the future. We're kind of thinking about how to utilize certain parts of the house, where to direct kind of investments in the house. So like I said, the garden is particularly important to us now. We never knew it was so important to us before. It's almost a kind of slightly neglected part of our home. So we really see the value in that, and like I said, we're kind of probably potentially thinking of converting the garage into an office space, a much more dedicated space for working from. Overall it's had I guess it had an impact, obviously, like it has for everyone socially, but we've been very lucky and not been impacted and been able to continue to work throughout. So
I think it's a bit of a humbling experience as well, especially when you understand how much you actually have.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, like for example, Spain was pretty like rough and like tough with their population. They say, okay, no one comes out at all unless, I think it was like once a day or once a week to the supermarket and back.
Right.
So I have like friends in Spain that live in the flat, so they couldn't get out of the flat for 3 months. Like with a couple of kids.
Sure.
So like you said, the gardens that some people, well, most people probably don't even look after, all of a sudden became such a massive asset. It's like everyone's, wow, I'm so happy that I have an asset.
Yes.
And I know friends here, they've been saying the same thing. They work from home and they have a garden, and they're like, oh, we're so blessed to actually have that. And it's funny because you don't appreciate it until you actually really, really need it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess even appreciating the existing space that we have, being able to have a couple of rooms, a decent sized living room, dining room, we can kind of spread out in the house. It's really good, and obviously we've got an extension on the horizons as well, so we're lucky to have the space to be able to expand the current home we live in. So very much feeling quite humbled and blessed.
Definitely. Have you managed to convert any of the existing rooms right now into like office spaces? As all temporary.
We have. We're utilising some of our garden furniture actually.
Right.
So the
garden works, right?
garden table is my office desk, and Amazon office chair off Amazon, and bits and pieces kind of thrown together have created a second office space, which is working well. Yeah.
Perfect. So obviously, I wanted to ask you what you felt that you were missing, but I guess that having maybe an office space would be number one.
Yes, I think we do currently have an office space. Actually, it's one of the smaller box rooms, but like I said, kind of previously, we expect that to be taken away when we do the loft conversion, or it will become a second kind of open study. So we do with my wife and I both working from home, we almost need 2 offices kind of moving forward in the future. Either having a flexible space where we can have kind of more of an informal office and one kind of dedicated office would be good. We obviously don't want to turn our lovely home into an office and make it all about work, but equally we do need the space to be able to cut out any distractions as well.
Yeah, definitely. How do you feel about the second lockdown possibly on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we as a country seem to be a bit much better prepared this time with the testing and some of the new kind of medication out there to combat the disease. Personally speaking, I don't think it's really going to impact me now. I'm so kind of acclimatized to the way we've been living since March. My wife and I personally haven't been out too much since the lockdown restrictions eased. I guess the only kind of thing we're not looking forward to is the winter and lockdown, so not really being able to utilize the good weather and be out in the garden or go for walks as much, or it not being as nice to do so. So that's probably the one thing, the shorter days and the bad weather and being at home.
You can probably put gas lamps, you just put it around the table, you switch that on, you put a gas canister, and that's it.
It's on the list of things we'd
really?
like. Yep.
Really? Oh,
but that list is pretty big.
Everything.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's COVID-19 done. So, last couple of things I wanted to ask you was just general advice. What advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a similar project? Like what kind of things they need to prioritize, and what they need to think about before they sort of take the plunge?
Yeah, I guess it really all comes down to planning and budgeting, really, for me. So I think it's the way I see it is you almost kind of write down a wish list of everything you want. You put it into an order, work out how much it's gonna cost, and see kind of how that aligns with your budget. But I think you have to kind of think in detail. It's very easy to think about kind of the bigger things. A kitchen will cost, X amount, or underfloor heating will cost this, or but you can forget about some of the small things that will begin to add up. So thinking like things like curtains and blinds. Once the builders are out, you're still going to need all those things, and quickly you'll see that those things begin to add up into a small fortune as well.
Yeah.
So really doing kind of thorough end-to-end planning, not just what the builders are going to do, but how you're going to finish the home as well, with the essentials that you will need to to live in. There's obviously some things that can wait. So I think it's never too early to start, I think, and that's what we learn, and kind of doing a lot of research, getting numerous quotes on different things, all the way from your builder through to kitchens, or through to smaller things like sofas and etc. as well. Just having that time to do that research, so you don't feel under pressure, kind of when when the builders are ready to come in.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah, I guess also thinking about some of the smaller finishes as well. I think the last time you guys were in, for example, we'd forgotten to think about kind of what door handles we wanted, and we get a call, and we're ready to put the door handles on. Which ones do you want?
Decision.
And we go and decide in half an hour, and of course it's not going to be the best decision you make, but I think just get into the detail is what I would say, especially when it's your own home. Other considerations, I guess it's more of a learning. It was around water pressure. Check kind of what water pressure you have and how your water is supplied to your house, because we were very lucky that we kind of found out that the pipe supplying our house was kind of one of the very old pipes, and kind of halfway through the project when we were in, we managed to get someone to replace the small thin lead pipe into a wide blue pipe, and all of a sudden we have much better water pressure. But I think you really need to kind of think about what other things you could do whilst the builders are in to kind of minimise disruption in the future. Because if we hadn't thought of that, we had to do it now, we would be having to dig up our lovely new driveway and the flooring, if it was something obviously important to us, to get that kind of thing done. So really try and do a lot of blue sky thinking, and get the right things done at the right time. We've been really impressed with our architect. He's been helping us design, so I think that's quite good. Finding someone you can work with, especially a good architect, to design your home is going to be just as important as the builder that kind of executes the work for you as well.
Okay. Do you remember what's your architect's name?
It's a company called V-Design. They're based locally, and I think that's actually an important thing for your architect to be based locally, so they understand the local planning legislations. They've obviously done a lot of work, and they know, because our property had a couple of nuances, which maybe an architect not familiar with the local planning laws, or had kind of tricky, I guess, applications to make, might not be able to make the application in the right way. Having experience with the local authority meant that we knew exactly how to submit our plans in what order. We didn't just submit one big plan altogether. We did it in stages, because we knew that we would this way round get it approved. But if we followed a different strategy with this particular council, we wouldn't get it approved. So
sounds like the architect knew exactly what he was doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's good when you come across that kind of people.
Yeah. So that was really helpful. And the only other thing was that we've been doing is kind of viewing other properties on the market that have already done this kind of extension, just to see what it will feel like. Take any other tips, that they've learned as well. So my wife is scared that we're going to end up buying another house instead of doing the extension.
Really? Why?
We might move instead of doing the work.
Right.
So,
yeah. Because you just find a house that's already finished, and that's it. You just move in and job done, right?
But to be honest, when we sit back and talk about it, it's actually great that we can do this ourselves. You can really make it your own and have it completely bespoke. You're never going to find something that's 100% right for you on the market. So
you'll still have to. And that's the thing. You move in, you think, okay, I love this house, and then after a while, you'll be like, well, actually, I like that, and then let's change that, and all of a sudden, you're like in the middle of major works yet again. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Any advice about how to handle money side of things? Again, I guess a lot of planning, a lot of thinking through, maybe stage payments or...
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to, that detailed kind of end-to-end planning. We have, for example, I think it's almost kind of touching like 100 lines of items that we want to, plan for and have a kind of a budget for each one or a price for each one. We know what the total is. We know if that total matches the borrowing that we've got from the bank or not. But obviously with building works, you're gonna you will have an opportunity to improve things. You might get suggestions through the way, or you might find unexpected things when the builders are in there digging things up. The drain might be in the wrong place, might need moving, things like that no one could really have known at the start of the work. Yeah. So I think it's important that you plan some form of contingency to allow for that. So that's obviously something that we'll be doing, and obviously based on our experience from before, we had options to improve things like I think we changed some of our internal doors at the time, and we had you guys in some small things like that, which will add up as you kind of go along. So
yeah. And in terms of contingency, like market sort of standard advice is to sort of keep like 5-10% available. It's not that you're going to use it for sure, but having that money sort of takes the stress away. Because imagine in the middle of a project something comes up and you just simply haven't got the money,
right?
And then you have to sort of scramble, run around banks, take a loan on a terrible rate, or borrow money from someone else. So you're sort of digging yourself a hole that you don't want to be in. So,
exactly.
I definitely agree with you when you say, really plan, think about it, don't fool yourself as well, So like if you know the items that you want are say 200 grand and you think you're going to do what for 150, it's literally, you're sort of you're creating a dispute without even starting.
Exactly.
And a lot of people sort of, I understand why, everyone just wants, the best they can achieve and value for money and everything else. But I think it's important to be realistic.
Yeah.
And plan and see, the figures, it's like a saying, math doesn't lie, if the figures show this is what's going to happen at least.
Yeah.
And that's like best case scenario, and then the worst case scenario, add another 10%, maybe 15.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I guess not doing this can really put a strain on, your relationships, both personally with your contractor as well. Yeah. Then you might end up having to make kind of some cutbacks, and you're going to end up with something you didn't want or not properly anyway in the first place. So, yeah.
And while we're on that subject, disputes, like, what would you advise? Would you advise always to do whatever it takes to compromise and try to find middle ground, even if, for example, contractor is not reasonable, or would you just say, if someone's not right, just go hot and heavy, lawyer up kind of thing, and try to get the result then?
No, I think it's always good to try and find a compromise. And in fact, I can think of an example. I wouldn't really call it a dispute that we had. I think it was probably just a bit more of a miscommunication. I don't know if you remember, we what we thought we had done is asked for all our sockets in our house to be placed at a certain height above the skirting board. And I think there's obviously new building regulations which mean they have to be placed a bit higher, and we weren't sure if they applied to us or not. And I think you guys had already started doing pretty much half the house already for us, and we found that we could in fact have them a bit lower. So I guess what you can call a dispute, it wasn't really a dispute, was trying to just get them all moved. And obviously, you've invested time and effort in placing all the sockets around the first floor of the house in a certain place. But it was great that we could have a conversation about it, agree, where, what the issue was, and come to a compromise of what we should pay to have the kind of that rectified. And I think that's the most important thing, being able to communicate and not to go in heavy-handed. Why you should just try and have a conversation, resolve it. And I think if both parties are willing to find a resolution, it will happen. Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest. All the legal disputes that companies are involved there, they're rarely beneficial for anyone, because at the end of the day, you're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to spend a lot of your time, you're going to invest yourself emotionally, and I don't think it's a good way. I think it's sometimes it's just better to always look at the big picture, and even if you're losing out a little bit and it's not the end of the world, I think it's still obviously it's a learning curve. People who haven't had the experience, they would think, oh well, it's better just to go to court and decide it there, but they don't think that people in courts, they're not particularly not in courts, but like solicitors, for example, they're getting paid by an hour. So if they can delay it for 40 hours, they will.
Sure.
And then they're going to give you the bill, and it'll be £200 an hour, and then you'll pay £8,000 plus the VAT, 9,600. Thank you very much. And then the dispute was what, £5,000.
Yeah, exactly.
So these kind of things, because obviously people don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what kind of fees are involved and things like that. You can go to small claims court, and it's very, very cheap.
Yeah.
But again, to actually get a decision in your favor, you have to be very knowledgeable, or you have to have a person who actually cares and helps you.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you just go to a regular solicitor and they'll say, "Oh, well, like we need this resolved," they will never resolve it.
Yeah.
Like, you'll be so lucky if any solicitor would be like, "Okay, listen, I'm your man. I'm gonna sort you out."
Yeah.
Most of the times, with sort of our experience, even you have to be extremely lucky to find people just like that, who will help you and who will invest themselves, into these disputes and try to resolve it for as little money as possible. It's normally the opposite. So I definitely agree with you. I think it's always a matter of just sitting down after cooling off a bit, sitting down and just talking.
Yeah.
Not even arguing about those items, just talking.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and we're obviously talking about undertaking a much bigger project than we did previously, and as great, as we'll try and communicate the best as we can, but I fully expect there to be a few issues along the way, which is no one's fault. It's just such a big project. There are small things that we wouldn't have thought about, or some things that would just come naturally to the contractor versus us. We might think of things differently. So I fully expect there to be some issues that we'll need to deal with along the way, but I'm confident about it as long as I select a contractor that I communicate with and that I respect and know that kind of respects us, and that no one's out to try and to get each other, if you like, or screw each other over. Then I'm confident that everything will work out as well. But nothing's such a big project, it's never going to be straightforward, so you've got to work with the right person.
Makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. In terms of the current situation in the country and all the freebies that the government's giving away, kind of thing, one of which is stamp duty. How do you feel about that? And so are you planning to use that perk right now?
Well, yes and no. My wife will want me to say no, but I have been kind of looking, like we kind of alluded to earlier on, at other properties that potentially have kind of the work done, which we can kind of either the space that we need, or in the house in a condition that we would like, that we could move to, and just to take advantage of that kind of stamp duty holiday. But kind of, I know in the back of my mind, realistically, it's better for us just to extend our current home and get it into a state that we are happy with, and be kind of personal to us. And like I said, you're never going to get that when you move home. I probably not is the answer to that question.
What were you actually thinking of moving your residency, or rather than buying like a buy-to-let or something of the sort?
Moving our residency actually. So maybe move into a slightly kind of better area. Not a million miles away, but just into maybe a slightly better area.
What did you have in mind?
So we either kind of moving slightly out of London, where there's a kind of better quality of life, maybe somewhere like St Albans. We don't necessarily kind of utilise central London as much as we used to anymore, so we don't need that kind of access.
Old, man.
Exactly. And with the whole kind of working from home through COVID-19, we don't need to be as commutable into our offices, so we can actually move out, have kind of more space and kind of fresh air, if you like, as well. So that was one of the considerations. But and I think that's always going to be a long-term consideration of ours. So, but for now, I think we'd still miss London a bit too much to move. So unless there's a great deal to be had because of the COVID-19 perks the government are offering, if you like, in terms of the stamp duty, etc.,
Mm.
we would consider it, but highly unlikely, I think. Yeah.
Do you feel that this stamp duty holiday created a mini boom in London or well in the country?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly did. I mean, I've seen kind of houses coming on the market and going within weeks. They're actually going for over asking price, kind of where I'm, in the area that I live in at least. So I think that's obviously it's obviously got the market back up to where it wants to be, and I guess that was the idea. And it kind of feels like we're almost back in kind of 2015 when I bought my house. People are bidding wars, etc., and houses not kind of lasting on the market for very long at all. So it definitely feels like the stamp duty holiday has done the trick to get the housing market back on track.
Yeah, I see those signs like literally one day they put up for sale, another one they like sold.
Yeah.
Just sold.
Yeah.
On my street, I think they sold 7 properties in like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Like the estate agents are doing well. So that's obviously one of the industries that benefited from the stamp duty. And I think they're quite busy, and good for them, obviously.
Yeah.
And government is getting something for that as well, and everyone sort of, they're trying to boost the economy.
Sure.
Obviously, there was a massive shrinkage of for 3 months. There was nothing going on at all.
Yeah.
You'd think that the government has all the money in the world, but they still have limits, and they still need to bring stuff in.
Yeah, I mean, it was the perfect storm, wasn't it, with the housing market, with Brexit on the way. The prices were kind of creeping down anyway, and then with COVID-19.
One after another.
Yeah.
People were worried about Brexit. Now this thing happened. So it's like it was a funny meme on the internet I saw. It was like January 2020. January 2020, February 2020, then March, then the next month is December, because like literally nothing's going on the entire year. It was just completely locked down.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen, because obviously they expect that the winter is going to be bad as well.
Yep, exactly.
Obviously they introduced vaccines for cold and flu, whatever it is.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, I hear that they're flying off the shelves kind of thing. People like book, they just want to do something to feel better and maybe not be susceptible to all the things that happen in the winter without the COVID-19.
Yeah.
And now this thing as well. So it's interesting where we're going with all this. It's like because until we get the vaccines, what we're going to do? Are we going to just keep locking down the country for the next 5 years?
Right, exactly, yeah. We'll have to see. Hopefully the vaccine will be out soon, at least in the next six months or so.
Yeah.
So
maybe we should make that call to Moscow. Speak with Mr. Putin. Putin, give us some vaccines. You sold it to 27 countries, so we can be one of them. But I guess Boris Johnson's not impressed.
No, potentially dodgy.
Potentially dodgy. It's Russia. Everything can happen, right?
Yeah.
Well, Vijay, well, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate you coming out here and speaking with us. It was a lot of fun, and obviously, I think it was a lot of valuable advice that you've given us. So,
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
Cheers. Thank you.